The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game, a show about short video games, games that respect your time. My name is Nate Heininger, and I am joined this week by two valiant co-hosts.
Laura Nash.
And Shane Kelly.
And this week we are discussing Beast Breaker, a game that is a turn-based mouse-bouncing adventure produced by Vodeo Games in September 22nd of 2021. It's available on PC, Mac, and Switch for $15. An adorable little game.
Yeah.
It's a super cute game. I was really intrigued to play this from the first time I heard about it, but the concept is not easily explained.
It's another pinball plus something, but it's not pinball per se. It's more like a brick breaker, but
with a
Battle?
full-on RPG story adventure mode tied into it. But before we get too much into the game itself, I think Vodeo Games has some interesting elements to it. I think, Laura, you've done a little bit of digging on this company.
yeah. So Vodeo Games has a familiar to us founder, Asher Volmer, who did Threes and Gildings and Puzzle Juice, which took closure. Had a deal with my former company, Game Club. But I didn't ever meet Asher, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, he and a large number of folks founded Vodeo Games, and their principal description of their games are cozy crunchy. Small, intimate games you can curl up with and completely lose yourself in. So they want complex, cozy games. And the other kind of banner thing on their About Us page is unionized, highly experienced.
Hell
and
yeah.
Here are their 4 beliefs. Depth and accessibility are not mutually exclusive. There's no such thing as an apolitical game. Game development should be sustainable, and game development should be playful.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So cozy games, with that you should feel good about your team behind it feeling.
Yeah. Well, considering the standard in the industry is back-breaking labor exploitation.
I was trying to describe what flavor of fire it was, and then I just got depressed.
Yeah. So,
See, actually, that is kind of when we had that conversation a while back about the kind of cozy games movement. One of the things that we were talking about as really a kind of a critique of it is that it's this stylistic approach to game design that is aiming to create a vibe that isn't really core to the industry, and you have, and it feels exploitative in a way to have that this is just a relaxing good time. Meanwhile, the people that made it were essentially digital sweatshop workers.
Yeah. And on top of that, I like that they call them, it's not cozy games, they do cozy, crunchy games. And that second half is they want a lot of systems, they want a lot of intricacy, they want a lot of stuff going on in a game that's still cozy. So it's cozy, but there's still a lot there.
This game really does have a lot. I think it is going to be very difficult for us to fully explain the gameplay loop of this game, which is not something I ever thought I would say about what is fundamentally Breakout, which one of my favorite little pieces of trivia there is that the original Breakout was designed by Steve Wozniak.
Hey,
that's nice.
Yeah, all the way back in the 70s.
Yeah, I think we have a wide range of opinions on this game, but when judged by that metric of it being both, whatever you think of, however you want to define cozy, but if you measure it by coziness and crunchiness, I think this game actually succeeds pretty well at that.
It's a good thesis statement for a company that says, like, assuming they made it in a sustainable and playful manner. We don't know that. We weren't there. But assuming they accomplished that, this definitely has a lot of complex systems in a very cute package.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought, well, I don't really want to get into the discussion of what cozy means. I would say this is a cute, crunchy game. This is an adorable, crunchy game. Everything is very stylistically aimed at being, cartoony and kind of silly. As you play Skipper, a adventurous mouse who has just to be completely clear, this story's a little difficult to follow, so I'm gonna have a little bit of a challenge explaining the plot.
I'll take a stab
Google
at it
map
for you there.
pins show up and turn into butterflies.
For some reason,
Skipper is kind of sitting alone at home and gets a urgent request for help from something that basically, looks exactly like a Google Maps pin, which is kind of hilarious.
And they later make a joke about it, so they know.
It is a shoot. I'm gonna mix up the terminology. There's like sparks and
there's moats and sparks.
Moats and sparks. What was a moat and which one was a spark?
Moats are the element or the atomic elements of a spark. So
Moats,
like 3 or 4 moats turn into a
4
spark.
moats per
3 to 4 moats make a spark.
Yes.
Crunchy.
So you're getting a call for help, and this is, by the way, in a world where kind of mysteriously, like a generation ago, magic has disappeared. It's also in a world where all of the sentient beings are cute, adorable forest creatures.
Do you like Redwall?
I do. But Skipper picks up their sword, which they find kind of in the basement, and they just run out because, if you're the hero in a story like this and you get a call for help, you go and defeats a tutorial monster and is then basically caught by their grandma, who says, hey, here's the down low on the spokes and marks. No, it's moats and sparks. And that's where it kind of introduces the basic gameplay loop, which is you are going out to defeat a beast. As you defeat that beast, you collect the moats. You use them to, I think it uses the term like untangle them into while you're making new equipment at a forge, which Grandma does because she's the forge master. And then you lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, you are defeating these beasts in order to return magic to the world, I think.
And protect the random villages that are in peril.
This is key.
Yeah, that is an interesting point, is that like the world is now set up into like small villages that are basically separate from each other with no real means of communication, because in between all of the villages are now these giant crystalline monsters or beasts, and no one had really been able to do anything about them until you, Skipper, suddenly are able to defeat these beasts. You're able to break these beasts. And yeah, that's the core gameplay loop. Is you have sort of a home base where you are using your marts and spikes to craft new gear and talk to various characters before you head out onto a adventure that consists of 2 parts, which is 1, tracking the beast, and then 2, defeating the beast. So I think we should start with defeating the beasts, though, because that's really the big part of this game, and then we can talk about tracking them after.
We've talked about mouse bouncing and pinball and whatnot, but it's in Brick Breaker. But Nate has recently played Peggle, so
Peggle.
he and anyone else who's played Peggle knows this, like the bounce mechanic. It's snood. It's all that kind of bounce off things mechanic, but the idea is that you have these what they
Laura,
call
it's
mosaic
absolutely not
beasts.
snood.
It's not snood, no. Snood is sticking. This is bouncing.
Yeah, although you are aiming like Snood.
You are aiming like Snood, but you
Yeah.
are not sticking like Snood.
Yeah.
Yes, that is very important.
Yeah,
But
I would say the key thing here is to talk about the mechanics of the fights. I'd probably start from the abilities here because when you're in a fight with one of these monsters, Skipper is very, very tiny on screen. Remember, because they are essentially the ball, and you get to choose depending on the weapon that they're wielding. You can pick one of these many different abilities that you can choose. Your abilities cost an action, and the abilities also use up steps, which are represented by I think this is a power up in Peggle where it tells you exactly where the ball is going to bounce the first time. Here, the steps are literal little mousy paw prints that represent where Skipper is going to be running and show you how many steps are going to be used before Skipper stops. Every ability is pretty well defined in terms of just like some of them represent like, okay, you're going to move until you touch something and then do a big attack that hits lots of the beast or bounce around a lot, stuff like that. The beasts themselves are then made up of tiles, and the beasts, it's turn-based, so the beasts mostly stand still until it's their time to move, and then they move and then sometimes attack. But the beast tiles, or scales, I guess, are covering up these, they're mostly white, but they cover up these pink cores. And if you break the cores, you're dealing damage to the beast. And then there's, of course, I think they call it like the primary core.
Vital core, I think.
The vital core, that's right. And that's the ultimate weak spot where if you break that, it destroys the beast.
Yeah, and when we're saying break, it's there are numbers on each of these little like prismatic tiles, scales, I think is what the game calls it, as Shane said. But when you hit it, there's a number on it, so it'll go down 10, 9, 8. So you can see how much damage each scale will take before it ruptures. Scales regrow, cores do not. So the idea is that the little, the 10 with a little star next to it, like you got to get that to 0, and then the whole thing breaks. But there's a big counter going down at the same time. Each action, each turn, it's just going to attack and reform in another formation. But if the rampage counter gets down to 0, it will destroy the village and you will end the game. So you're also trying to balance things that stop the rampage from going off, from causing core damage, from just, having fun with the game. There's a lot of strategy for a bouncing game.
Yeah, it's actually like pretty tight. There's not a lot of room for error in this game, at least with my experience with it. Every time there's the vital core, and that usually has the most amount of hit points. But all of these other little cores, and it'll be like, imagine a big spider, and the part around its head is the vital core, and it'll have like a HP of 20. And there'll be scales all around it that have HPs of like 1 or 2. So on your turn, you only have 2 or 3 actions. Usually you're going to try to bounce into the scales to break away the 1 or 2 value scales, to expose the 20 core, and then hit that as many times as you can. Your turn will end. The spider will move around, and most of the time, unless you've used some ability to prevent it, those scales you broke away are going to reform exactly as they were. And you start over and over. But there's also, if you're thinking of a spider, like the back half of the spider might be a core that's like 10. And then each of its legs will be a scaled leg with a core that might be only 2 or 5 health, usually smaller. And if you destroy any other core other than the vital one, it resets that rampage counter, meaning you get a whole new run of turns before the whole game ends. And when you destroy these sort of exterior cores, they drop those motes or sparks. So you really are incentivized to whittle down the beast by focusing on these exterior moat or these exterior cores. Kill them all until you just have like a wide open shot at taking down the vital core. Because with the way that the beasts are always moving and reshaping, it can be really hard to get a clear shot on the vital core when there's all these other arms, or like the beasts are crazy. I mean, they're the entire
Enormous.
screen. Yeah, they're the entire screen. It'll be like spider things or scorpion things or like weird, just like completely incomprehensible beasts, you know, and you really generally will only have like 5 to 8 turns before that rampage counter goes to 0 and you just lose. So there's
not only do you lose, the beast rampages through the nearby village, presumably
killing everyone,
killing lots of adorable woodland creatures.
And then they're like, but I guess they'll rebuild.
Yeah.
Which also happens if you quit a game, quit in the middle of a round. Like I had to sometimes do life stuff and quit the game, and I was like, yeah, abandon the quest. It was like, then the beast rampages off, destroys the town, and everyone goes, oh.
Yeah, there's an endless amount of beasts for you to fight. There's whenever you go on an adventure, you can generally just choose. You're either going to do an adventure that is like main quest associated, which still, no matter what's happening in the main quest, it's always there's a beast you have to fight. Or there's just like an endless amount of, or at least seemingly endless amount of just beast breaker fights that you can go and do to collect motes and collect experience or practice with your new weapons. Because there is a pretty large amount of different weapons and combinations that you can do, like Shane was saying at the beginning, that alter these abilities, give you a shorter range but higher damage, or there's a bow that fires a ton of arrows, but the arrows don't always deal damage, but they bounce a lot. Like there's a ton. I personally really enjoyed using the hammer, which has a mechanic of the more you use a single attack style, the more powerful that attack gets. So it becomes this sort of balancing act of, trying to like time it where you're using the same style of attack as many times as possible before you run out of actions or charge or whatever it is. I don't know. What weapons did you guys, or did the two of you end up using the most or enjoy the most?
Not a huge fan of the bow and arrow, personally.
Yeah.
I do not like any weapon that may or may not do damage.
Yeah,
I want damage to be secure.
I had a couple very bad runs with the bow, because it's like you fire 3 arrows, but each has a 20% chance to do damage. And so I had times where it was like, I need to do 1 damage against this core, and I'd fire 6 arrows, and none of them did damage, and I lost the turn. Like, well,
yeah, I want some 100% chance of damage, because sometimes you're down to the wire, and like I lost more games with the bow and arrow than any other.
Yeah.
So I did really enjoy the hammer. I think I didn't play it for every beast, but the shapes of the beast honestly mean the hammer works really well for some and not others.
Yeah.
Like if I rarely failed with a hammer, but there were times where I got to the last blow, which also actually feels really awesome, because the hammer, the thing about the hammer is you build up what they say is inertia, which means that you start off pretty weak, but over time, if you keep reusing the same actions, they get stronger and stronger and stronger. So you get to the point where like there's 8 left in the core, it's about to rampage, and you just smack it real hard and kill it, and that feels great. But it's a very risk reward thing, which I think was very fun for me, because I've been playing with the sword and shield, which is a more traditional. What is? There's no tradition.
In your classic mouse, classic breaker mouse game,
billiards, pinball, bouncy game. So I played a lot of sword and shield, and when I wanted something different, I did hammer. Yeah. How about you, Shane?
Mainly, I liked the sword and shield. It's the most straightforward. You just kind of launch yourself at the beast and deal damage. And That's a lot of fun. But the one we haven't mentioned here, I only got one of, was the knife. With the knife, you are kind of equipped with an arsenal of knives to throw, but then you have to recollect them to use them again, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think the thing about the weapons is that you're constantly getting new variations on the weapons and the armor. Each one of these 4 main types has a lot of different variations that you can get. And the main thing that they vary is the different skills that you can use in combat. And then for each of those weapons, the armor kind of lets you have a twist on how the battle itself works, because I think the effects of the armor were mainly changing the result of hitting those swapping yellow tiles. I don't think we mentioned those yet. There's these like yellow tiles that mainly, I think by default, are giving you an extra action.
That's what the base armor does. The base armor gives you an extra action, and then the various armor will alter what it happens when you break that yellow block. So like the bow and arrow, or there's one of them that when you break the yellow block, you get 5 more arrows. But you really only want to be wearing that armor when you're using the bow and arrow, or it won't be useful to you.
And here's the thing. I always just want an extra turn.
Yeah.
So
generally speaking, action economy, you want as many actions as possible. I almost always...
Especially when those actions oftentimes are the only thing that's going to let you delay that rampage timer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If I have one big frustration with this game, it's that there is a significant element of randomness in your bouncing. Like maybe if you were like a pool professional who can like foresee how a mouse will bounce 15 times off of a beast, then like this isn't truly random, but it is very, very difficult to predict where you're going to end up. With some of
this is not hold down where we can guess exactly where the thing will go for a while.
I had the same problem, Shane. I think it's because you are so small on the screen and you bounce so fast that I never really felt that I understood how the trajectory was going to work. With a lot of these bouncing games, Brick Breaker, Peggle, or whatever it might be, you do start to kind of get a feel for what the bounces are going to look like. And you might not be perfect at it, but you generally kind of feel like, I'm going to go over this way, and this is the area where I'm going to end up. I never felt that way with this game. It's just like, aim your mouse at the thing I know I want to hit, and then I just kind of hope the chaos ends with me in a good place to continue hitting where I want to hit. And in some ways, that was, or more often than not, that was less fun. But every once in a while, you would get those like golden bounces where you're like, holy shit, that was way better than what I was expecting it to do. Although I had one I was playing before we started recording, and there was this certain armor set where you could build up additional steps. And I'd built up like an extreme amount of steps that I was really saving for one like ultimate run. And I fired it off, and the only time I've seen this happen, I got stuck in a perfect left to right bounce between 2 scales that would not break. And it just bounced back and forth for like 15 seconds and burned all of my precious step that I've been building up to. It's just like, what are the odds that I landed exactly in between 2 parallel walls at exactly the right angle to bounce back and forth? So I had that same experience, Shane. I wish that I wish you moved a little bit slower so you could learn what the bounces look like, but also that there's so much of it that would probably really bring the game, like the pace of the game down. But it did feel like I never had a good idea of where I was going to go and what I could do to get better at predicting my bounce.
Did you play on Switch?
Yes.
I did too. And this made me want this for my iPhone because I wanted to be able to very carefully scroll slowly and stop.
or like zoom in. Yeah, the Switch,
or
you can use the trigger buttons though.
Well, even just the slowness of like moving, like when you're trying to, for example, there's one thing with the hammer, momentum, which is the way I played it, fling yourself as far in a direction because as many steps as you go is as much buildup as you get. So I would try to like shoot myself far into a corner if I needed to build a momentum. But sometimes I'd be stuck in really odd positions and I'd have to very, very carefully thread the needle between 2 points.
Yeah.
And I would just spend, 3 minutes moving my little switch trigger back and forth, trying to get that one tiny pixel where it shot all the way across the screen. And I just sat there for 2 or 3 minutes, very patiently. But I wanted the precision of being able to move my finger and stop it.
One thing I did enjoy about the variation in weapons, though, is I thought they had a very simple way to incentivize you to try these new weapons. There is a experience counter system and like a level up system, though I don't actually really know what you were getting when you were leveling up. It's your renown level. I think it was tied to the main story, but I honestly never felt like I got anything for leveling up. But I still was, hey, it's leveling up. It's a video game. I want to level up, and so you earn what's called renown. And if you use a weapon that you've never used before, you get 50% more renown. And so you're pretty frequently getting new weapons. And I think a game like this, it's pretty common for someone to kind of settle in on a weapon that they like. And I found this bonus to using a new weapon just enough incentive for me to try out every weapon that I got. And
an absolutely meaningless incentive, but it worked on me too.
Yeah, I want to level up, and I like to explore all the game has to offer, but like for games like this where it can, you at least I can lost a lot, and you're kind of always on this edge of managing that rampage that like I was never super comfortable just breaking these beasts. It kind of always felt like this, like on the edge of losing game. So like you would really, I think most people would find a combo that they like and just stick with that because it kind of sucks to lose. But I don't know, that meaningless incentive of increasing a counter to increase a counter that doesn't mean anything was still enough for me because, hey, I want to level up. Who doesn't want to level up?
That said, once I was able to get the companion to come along with me, I stopped. It still felt like what a companion will do several things for you. They'll help you in the battle if the beast is going to rampage one time. It will stop it by doing something very arbitrary, in my opinion, but or very funny. I only triggered it the one time Poppy had to come with me, and she just threw things all over the field and like left.
Yeah,
I was like, "Thanks, Poppy. Thanks, my wonderful squirrel cook friend."
Poppy, short for
chipmunk,
paprika, which is adorable.
It is absolutely adorable. But
very big personalities on these characters.
Everybody.
Yeah. So, we haven't talked about the other part of the gameplay loop, but I do want to, since I've opened the door. Let's talk companions, folks. How do you feel about the characters in this game?
I mean, they are all over the top and also like impossible to follow at the same time. I felt like there was so much dialogue in this game that was very lovingly written and very lovingly put together. Every character was a unique character, but also it's like, what are they talking about? It is an insane world of like these giant beasts and the magic and the technology and like the queen. And I don't know. It was, I loved the effort and the scope that they were going for, but I also found myself just like, what is anyone talking about all the time?
That's kind of something that's interesting to maybe drill down on a little bit here, because we're coming into this game that the thing that I knew Asher Vollmer for is possibly one of the simplest games of all time.
Threes is going to be around forever. Like,
Yes, it was eminently duplicatable and imitatable. Of course, people have seen probably more copies of the idea than they have the original. But it was brilliant in its simplicity. This game is it's brilliant, but in its bizarre complexity, where it's taking this kind of incredibly simple brick breaker concept that's been around since the late 70s and has been recreated. Like the name, I think, Beast Breaker is a play on Brick Breaker, which was the version of Breakout that was on like Blackberries. So it's now on the App Store. But it's kind of a strange inversion to see how complex this really was.
Yeah, I mean, everything about this game, their goal was chunky, or wait, was it chunky?
Cozy crunchy.
Crunchy, not chunky.
The other kind of peanut butter.
Yeah, sorry. Wait, crunchy and chunky? No, that's the same kind of peanut butter.
Cozy creamy.
Yeah, creamy's the other kind of peanut butter. Anyway, this game is crunchy in every capacity. We just spent 20 minutes talking about the mechanics, and we really scratched the surface of the mechanics. There's so much more to it between all the different weapons and all the different beast types and all the different, whatever. And then the story is the same. It's only a handful of characters, but there is...
No, you get quite a few as you go along. Ultimately, you are going to fill that house with weird little beasties.
But they all have like their backstory and their motivations, and they have their own tone. Like they speak in their own unique way, and they talk about like the history of the world and where they were at the various times of these, impactful moments of history in the world. And it's a lot.
I think there is a depth to the story here. Like it is a kind of a complex story. Like that gets into, like not just the history of the world, but kind of the ecology of the world and the, impact that technology has had on the world. And there's a lot going on here. And so I definitely think that it's clear that they're really looking to create a game with a ton of depth, and still do that while like the every screen you look at, you're like, oh, a cute character. Oh, he bounces.
Yeah.
And also it's not hard to follow what to do next in this game, which I have been on the podcast recently going, I got too many weapons. They do too many things. I don't like this. I hate this. I hate that. I think this year I've talked about that. But I am very happy with 1,000,000 weapons if I get one at a time and I can play it and then I decide if I like it and then I can pick a different one. Like if I'm not getting, like if weapon switching isn't happening every 30 seconds, if I can do a full battle with each one, turns out I'm very happy with 1,000,000 weapons.
Yeah.
So I think this is mostly, to me, a lesson on what makes a game feel accessible despite getting more and more complicated every round.
That's a good call, because despite all the characters and despite all the backstory, you're really only interacting with one or two of them at a time, and it's really clear when you're supposed to interact with someone. You'll be back at your little house that has like a kitchen where Poppy works, and the forge where Granny works, and your expedition place where you talk to your Google Maps pin, and like your main home where Jonquil hangs out, which is a great name. And there'll be little speech bubbles that are very obvious on the screen.
Big fan of Dandy.
Yeah. When you're supposed to talk with one of them, it's there. And so okay, I got to talk to Jonquil, which is nice. There's only a couple things at a time that you're supposed to do. Then you set out on an expedition. You can choose your weapons, and then you go and you do the same thing over and over and over. But just the sheer amount of dialogue and amount of times, even though it's only one or two maybe times that you're talking to people in between each fight, you're doing a lot of these Beast Breaker scenes. So you end up talking to a lot of people. And I went back and forth on how much I ultimately enjoyed that gameplay loop, because a lot of it felt like an excessive amount of lore and background to get to a fight that I was going to feel on edge about and never really feel in great control over, and then lose, and then go back and have to talk to all these guys again to go out and do another run. And I really appreciate the complexity that it's going for. But at times, this just wasn't very fun for me, and I wish that it was more fun. I don't know what would have made it more fun, because I actually really like Brick Breaker games. There's something satisfying about just the zen quality of a ball breaking through the bricks and like learning the speed of the ball and the paddle maneuver or whatever it may be. But I never really got that with this game, so it just was. It's a lot to take in all the time.
Maybe stick with your sword and shield, babe.
Yeah. Maybe I was trying too hard with all the different mechanics.
Glad you did, because to me, this was a game that I'm really glad I played in like hour shifts at a time. I'd play a couple beasts. I'd, get some backstory. I'd go about my life. We don't always have that luxury. Often I'm trying to play in one night. I think I would have had tried 18 weapons in a row and gotten very bewildered. And so I think it's funny for this to be the game that I'm like, take breaks, but because it's such a light game in some ways, but it also is very complex. And I think it's going to be more fun the chiller it is.
Yeah. I feel like we're like inching towards wrap up, but I think we do need to talk about the whole other like mini game that is in this game that is in we've talked about the home base and we've talked about the beast breaking, but because this game needs more stuff, there is a little grid based hexagonal like hunt and peck sort of searching mini game thing where the story of it is that you're out to hunt a beast, and it's in the general area of this settlement. So you start in this settlement, and how many hexagons do you think? Probably like 24 or something like that. It's like
5 by 5 by 5.
Yeah, it's like a
hexagonal grid.
Yeah. And it's turn based here, so it's all like Fog of War style, where you can only see yourself and your surrounding hexagons, and then you have a little mouse basically that you can click on another hexagon, and you'll move over to it and you'll expose the hexagons around you, and there may be resources for you to pick up, which you can spend to buy essences, which you apply on a bounce. Again, another layer of complexity, and these essences do all sorts of different things. Or you may actually encounter the beast, and every time you get next to the beast, you learn a new element of the beast, which gives you a little bit of a heads up about what it's going to be able to do, and you can either challenge the beast or you can let it go. But the beast is absorbing these pools of goo or ooze.
Corrupted.
Yeah. And every ooze or goo or whatever that it absorbs, it becomes more powerful. So you have this this balancing act of how many resources do I try to collect to spend on essences, which are pretty powerful, at the expense of the monster becoming more powerful.
I think it's also worth mentioning that this is where they kind of integrate story into the quests, because there's not really any story to be had while you're actually doing the bounce by bounce combat. So it's at this level where there'll be quests that are like, go and find the missing person who wandered off, or go and find the crashed airship, or go and find it's usually just like locate something on the map, or get from one point to the other on the map. I love it when there is like a gameplay element that they can build the story into. I don't know that this game totally needed that because it is so confident in its story outside of the missions, but it is kind of neat, and I like the press your luck element that you get out of this ability to do the little upgrades and get the items. And the items are very effective in the fights.
Yeah, I did find myself prioritizing getting the items over like going into a fight really quick because they were so helpful. It's things like on bounce, create a small explosion that deals 1 damage in a radius, so that now whenever you hit a scale, you're probably not just breaking that scale, you're breaking a couple around it, which, expose the core more quickly. Or there's potions that you can get for health or for charge, valuable things that I found worthwhile, but also maybe I just was bad at reading the UI, but I could like never completely grasp when the monster or the beast rather was going to absorb the settlement. So like 3 or 4 times, especially early on, I'd be out collecting resources and it'd be like, the settlement was destroyed. I'm like, shit.
It roars a few times. I found it is on the side. They show like how many pools it's eaten.
I saw it told you how many pools it's absorbed, but I couldn't tell. I guess it's just after all 3.
It does 3, and then the next one will be the settlement.
Okay.
But it also, I will flat out say, I failed more at tracking than I did the main game by far. Like I was constantly going on little like, you can do side quests basically to get more resources or practice or have fun. And I was doing some of those and I lost several in a row because I couldn't track. And then I got my first companion, and the companions not only have battle abilities, they have tracking abilities. And that made it so much easier because I didn't have to waste a whole turn trying to get some blueberries.
Yeah. Like you can send John Quill, if you bring him with you, you get like a free, you can basically pick any hexagon out in the map and you'll ship him over that way and he'll go out, do a little dance and then expose the, all the hexagons around him. And that doesn't take a turn and you can see what's over there. And it's a nice little boon and they all have their own little companion bonuses.
My favorite was Lord Dandelion Gladiolus du Frutilia, the 5th heir to the Marquis of Summercrest Mallow. Nope, Mallow's not that. Mallow is a different person's name. Heir to the Marquis of Summercrest. I'm not going to say it again. Mallow is a different person.
Yeah. Thank you for... I could see the joy in your eyes
Dandy
as you started to read
I was just rolling, and then I was like, oh, that must be a word wrap. Nope, that was a line break.
Yeah.
Yes, Dandy, the cockatoo, best tracking power, because basically...
Cockatiel, I think.
Oh,
is that your difference? Are cockatoos cockatiels?
I don't know. I don't know. I will...
Listeners, write into the short game.
Yeah, I will... You said it with such confidence.
This is an unknowable thing. There's no way any of us can know.
Not without
I looked up the characters. If you go on Vodio's website, they have a collection of little character sheets for each character where you can see all like different pictures of them and their details. It's very, 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 very cute stuff.
But
that is good content.
All very lovingly crafted, for sure.
Mm-hmm. The art in this game, I have to give it a little bit more praise because it is just really well done cartoony line art and the sprites are great. Like one thing I even noticed is like a lot of games where they have like just sprites facing each other and talking, which is, this is basically is, they will be really lazy about how much art they want to put for each character. There's a lot for each character, including stuff like, I think I remember Granny Whiskersmith is like a spotted, multicolored rat creature, and a lot of games will have like an asymmetrical character like her that has like a big spot on one side, but that spot will just jump back and forth when they turn left or right because it is just flipping the sprite. But for her, they have a unique sprite, whether she's facing left or right. They put a lot of love into every little piece of art that goes into this game. And, it's a lot of it is really good. Big fan of Mallow's design. He's the tree frog guy, and he is just funky looking.
Yeah,
I very
rad.
Much like Mallow. I I got to Ballow's reveal and did not get to play Ballow as much, but I think I probably would have made him my main companion had I continued more.
Yeah, this is an interesting game where it's like every piece of it is definitely well thought out and considered, and I think, handled by experts. The art's well done. The story, may or may not be your thing, but they clearly care about it. And the beast breaking stuff is interesting, and the little tracking thing is interesting in and of itself. But for some reason, at least for me, it was almost like the sum of all the parts was too much, like I needed some subtraction at some point to make this game a little bit more, appealing to me personally, or maybe just the Beastbreaker element to it was just not as fun as I wanted it to be, and I wish I could explain more clearly why it wasn't as fun as I would think it would be for all of the things that we added together. But I think you certainly can't say that they didn't try to consider everything and be, completionist in their content and their thought process for everything. I think this is definitely a game that had a ton of attention to detail end to end.
I mean, I didn't realize until right before we started recording that there's even like elemental stuff where like there's different element associations with the beast, and then the different things you forage for can be useful in different ways against them. And I was just
there's so much.
And all the beasts have different layouts so that you can bounce in specific ways, and some will work very well with some, like some are very tight screens, some are very loose. It's just there's so many things to think about that you're doing the same thing over and over again, but I feel like it's as complex as this could be. I don't see what else they could add to this, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think I'm sure there certainly could be more, but I'd be more interested in stripping it down a little bit, making you feel a little bit more in control of the bounce and become more of an expert at the actual primary gameplay mechanic rather than just choosing the system that you want to use, firing it off, and hoping it goes the way you want it to go. I don't know. Maybe there's Beastbreaker experts out there who really became experts at that. But I played a lot of this game, and I felt like my first fight and my last fight were pretty similar as far as my ability to control and manage the fight.
They're definitely scaling you alongside the beasts.
Yeah.
Overall, I think this game is supposed to be one on the longer side for us. It's more like 12 and a half hours.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you want to do all the side quests...
None of us were able to finish it in the time allotted.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of game that I think, because like each individual fight is a pretty discrete bite, and then you can kind of get through the story at whatever, pace makes sense for you. It's the kind of thing that I can see myself dipping in and out of whenever I just am in the mood to keep going with it.
I can't wait to play this on a bus to my in-laws' house, stuck in the Hollow Tunnel. Like, I can get stuck in that tunnel for like 45 minutes, and I'll just play a couple rounds of this, and I'll be happy.
Definitely agree on that. Like, I think you can choose to the degree at which you want to interact with this game. There's always this seemingly endless well of side quests and whatnot. But outside of a few instances, the game doesn't force you to interact at all with that side element. You can just basically mainline the main quest if you want. And I think that's great. I think while this game is a little bit longer and we have our, some issues with it, it's definitely a game that respects your time. And, I don't want to discourage anyone from trying it. I think this game definitely deserves some attention. Just the amount of thought and effort that went into it, I think, is commendable. And the art and all of that is a real highlight. It's adorable.
And it's filling a niche I don't have.
At $15, I think this game is a great pickup if you are interested in this kind of gameplay, if you're like me, there have been many times in your life that Brick Breaker has eased its way in, and you have spent time with yet another variation of Brick Breaker. I think this game, for me, I picked it up on sale. It went down to something like $7 right at the start of the year, and that's when I picked it up. And it was definitely a lot of value for me at that price. But just being able to kind of tinker with it a little bit at a time ever since then has been a really satisfying way to play the game. Yeah. So that's how I would recommend people engage with it.
Yeah, a lot of our games have I wouldn't say a high barrier to entry, but they're you can dip in and out of them while you're playing them, but once you stop, it's going to be really hard to remember. A thing in this game's favor is no matter how complex it is, every screen has those little tooltips. This is also a thing I praise the hell out of Hades for, because I never have to remember what anything does. It will tell me, please put this in every game, because I will pick your game back up, even if I don't have muscle memory, and I will work to re-achieve it because I don't have to remember. The strategic memory is still there. Like, please, just give me tooltips in your game. I'm begging you.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point, Laura. This game has a ton of obvious and clear guidance as to what everything does.
I don't remember what shudder means, or what shatter versus taunt, but it will tell me.
Yeah, there's so many.
And I don't have to remember this. It's great.
So before we wrap up for this episode, I think we have enough time to do our favorite segment, making us happy or making me happy. I don't know. Shane, what's been making you happy this week?
Well, I always love to come to these segments with a movie recommendation. And this one is, I think, a recommendation with maybe a few caveats. But I wholeheartedly enjoyed watching the new 2022 Scream. This has the same title as the very first Scream. No, they didn't call it Scream 5. They just called it Scream. And the fun of this one, I think, is especially keen for people who were like genuinely freaked out by the original Scream, which I was, and the thing about Scream as a the original was it was kind of a horror movie that was a commentary on the tropes of horror movies. And at the time, in like 1993 or whenever, I'm guessing.
I think it was a little later than that, but
I won't look that up.
But not that much later. When that movie came out, that was a very original like kind of concept. And the 90s were all about being kind of meta and ironic. And then they've continued on making four more of these movies. And this one kind of looks back and it's a commentary, kind of. It's hard to say when these things are basically slasher movies that are that it's a commentary, but it's commenting, or it's sending up the tropes of kind of its own mini genre, where Scream has become basically a the DNA of Scream is its whodunit that. Where it's whodunit meets a slasher film, where eventually some member of the two members group, because Scream is known for always having two murders, and this is the thing people forget, and they call this out in the movie.
They do. And then simultaneously, it's kind of satirizing.
No, it's a spoiler for every single Scream movie.
Every single Scream movie, basically.
Well, it came out in 1996. Okay, so maybe some of us haven't seen it yet. Okay.
Well, you're in for a treat, because but the thing about the Scream series is the characters learn from being in horror movies over and over again, and there's a fake film franchise of the Scream movies in the So it's all very meta. The
Incredibly.
kid literally says, like, I prefer the Babadook, or like she's like, I prefer art house horror in the beginning
Yeah.
of it. And he's like, no, slashers are the best.
Elevated horror. And
Elevated horror.
So that's the thing. It's also a commentary, or it's on like horror fandom culture, because there's this kind of divide that's not really a divide between this kind of to many made up subgenre of elevated horror versus that's your
But you know what's in it. It's
yeah.
I've watched several recently as part of my March movie marathon. It's you know, the Midsommar, the Babadook, the Hereditary, Under Her Skin. Like it's those kind of like it's Get Out, it's Parasite, it's horror, but it's got this like social consciousness or feminist or something. Or it's in Sweden.
Yeah, as long as your horror movie is trying to say something, which technically they kind of all are, at least mostly. And but then my favorite thing about the new Scream was the way it satirizes legacy sequels, or where this is the new trend of rebooting franchises without really rebooting them, where from the beginning here they called it just Scream, but it really is just. It should really have been Scream 5 because it's just a continuation of the story.
Scream, the reboot.
Yeah. So it's where you reboot things, but then you have a few scenes with people from the original, and you make sure that people know that it's all really tied together, even though it's sort of not. So that's fun. Like, if any of that appeals to you, if that's you, check it out. If not, really, you got to see. I wouldn't say go into this one without seeing at least the first.
Yeah. I had seen 1 and 2.
Yeah, I have seen them.
Watch Scream and then watch Scream.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wonder if that naming convention is eventually going to come back around and be a problem when we're on like the 5th one that's just named Scream and it's like 2085 or whatever. But
Scream if you know what I did last winter.
Or Scream the second one?
Scream 2022.
Scream 2022.
Yeah. You mentioned Parasite. I watched that. It's been a little while now, but I didn't see it when it first came out. And that movie was directed by, written and directed by the guy who made The Host, which was one of my favorite movies. Mm-hmm. And I feel very strongly about avoiding spoilers and avoiding really anything. Same sort of thing I take on this show. I just go into it completely blind. It's my favorite way to engage with media. And because he made The Host, one of my favorite movies, I had assumed Parasite was also a monster movie.
Oh, amazing!
And
the monster is capitalism. Nate.
Yeah. So I hope this is a spoiler only for people like me. So I'm sorry if you're like me out there and you've not watched Parasite. So go and watch Parasite. But there's a lot of things in that movie that, if you think it's a monster movie, it could be a monster movie. There's a lot of little.
Okay, you really make me want to do like a double feature of Korean cinema where we do first The Parasite and then The Host, which is a monster movie.
Well, that's what. So like, there's a lot at the beginning.
Wait, that's him too, right?
Yeah, it's the same
it
guy.
Is.
Yeah, that's the point.
That's why you said. That's why he's comparing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am so slow on the uptake when you are making good jokes, Nate.
It's not a joke. It's my life.
It's Nate's life. Yeah.
There's a lot at the beginning because I could be like,
and it's called Parasite.
Yeah,
so you think it's going to be like an alien scenario?
I really thought there was going to be some sort of underlying actual monster element to it. There's like scenes early on with people behaving very strangely, and there's like gas being sprayed. I was like, oh, okay, here comes. And then it was like way too late into the movie before I started to realize, like, okay, there's not a physical, actual monster. This is a monster movie to a degree, but not like literally not a some sort of physical monster. But anyway, Laura, what's making you happy?
So I have been watching a million movies because I'm doing a March Madness Best of the 2010s, but I'm currently a little sad.
My bracket's going terrible in your
actual.
No, I don't do that. But in your March Madness movie marathon, my bracket's going terrible.
Oh yeah, I'm currently on top, but that's not going to last. but I am a little sad today because a couple of movies I loved didn't make it through the first 2 rounds. So instead, I'm going to talk about a very different thing, which is Pudding.cool back in 2020 did a site that was supposed to collect data on generational gaps in music. So basically, someone watched Pudding.cool. They do a lot of cool, like, visual design, like, infographic-y stuff, but it's like, you know, pocket sizes, or it's all very strange and up my alley. But they saw TikTok about a bunch of very young people listening to very familiar music and having no idea what it was, like listening to a wedding Michael Jackson track and being like, who is this? I've never heard this before. So they, discovering Led Zeppelin, that was like a big TikTok trend. So the powers that be at this data site was like, what if we made a little engine that played you snippets of music from each decade? You said how old you were, and then it used this to tell you, what 68% of millennials know this song, or like 5% of boomers. And they wanted to see which tracks make it across generations and which ones just fall off the map entirely, which ones are only associated with your generation. So you go to the site, you turn your sound on, they play you a bunch of 30-second clicks, and you say from don't know it, sounds familiar, like I know this song and I am singing along, like this, I know this song.
Yeah.
Those are your 4 ways, which every single survey should learn from this. There should be an emoji, and it should be like that clearly ranked of like, I kind of know the song, to like, yes, I know this.
The results would be completely skewed if it was like one end was like, name this song.
It's just don't know, sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I know it, and like, yeah, I super know this song. And
is it all 90s music?
No. So when you first play it, they're going to give you a random decade and give it to you. And after you've played it through once, here's the trick. They'll give you a playlist of all the things you've played, which categories it's in. You can keep doing as many decades as you want, as many times as you want. And at the end, you're going to have a huge list of songs that you didn't know that you know. And you can also click on each of the songs in your like results and hear the clip. So if you're looking for music you haven't heard before from a decade, you can just listen to the 60s like 10 times in a row and then go back in and be like, here's my playlist. Boop. So this is most fun in 2 ways. One, if you're looking for new music, this is a perfect way to like rediscover stuff that you haven't heard in a long time. And like also weirdly find out which decades you're better at than you should be, because you can look at the bottom for every song and see the percentage of people in your age bracket that lines up. You're like, only 10% of millennials know this, but I, have heard this song for years.
Yeah.
So you get to find out how different you are. But the second thing it's really fun to do is at a group event, like I know Passover is coming up, and if you're trying to like kill time, like, it's fun to put this on and have people, like, yell, be like, oh, yeah, I know this. And grandma's like, I don't, and hits the no button. Like, we played it at Thanksgiving. It was a blast. The thing, it's incredibly fun. You get a playlist out of it. And you also can, if you skip the whole deal through it, you can get, like, their results of, like, this is the most important thing from... Like, this is the song that a millennial knows. This is the song that only a boomer knows. They have a full write-up of all the results from it. So it's fun to play as a toy, and the data is fun.
That's interesting. It's pudding like the dessert.
Pudding like the dessert. Pudding.cool.
Cool.
And the title is Identifying generational gaps in music. So if you just do, it's pudding.cool/2020/04/music-challenge. And
Cool.
you just pick where you were born and take the little quiz, and you can do it for days and days.
I'm
it's also
scrolling through the Cool Pudding homepage right now, and a lot of these headlines for their articles are things I want to go back and click on later. Very Very cool looking site. Thanks for suggesting it.
It's all visual essays with data, and this is one of the ones that I've had the most fun with.
Here's another similar one. To help you get out of your geographic music bubble, we found songs that are most popular far away from you.
100%. And it's incredibly, like, if you listen, the first fact is, if you listen to pop music, you've likely heard Butter by BTS, which is the most popular song in New York City. But, like, if you go to Hoboken, Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo has Butter level popularity. It's like, what? Like, go around the map and discover what's hot in other cities. It's very fun. I love a site that uses data in a visible and cool way versus sites that like take your data and use to sell ads. I'm like, yes, take my data and then tell me what music to listen to, because that's way more fun for me. I'll give you that data for days.
Well, I'm going to piggyback right off of this. I was originally going to talk about baseball being back, but who cares about that? Instead, speaking of going outside of your region, I recently learned about an Indian metal band called Bloodywood.
I heard of this and I haven't listened to it. Is it good?
I mean, so I love Bollywood music, and I connect with some metal music, and so this is a mashup that I never knew I needed. I definitely recommend you check it out. The best little tidbit is they did a tour and they called it Raj Against the Machine, which is just hilarious and beautiful. So, we used to do, we called it Bollywood Film Club, and we would have frequent meetings, and we just went deep into the Bollywood catalog. So, I'd love to talk about that sometime, but
what fun.
I will just recommend checking out Bloodywood, which is what a great name, and it's great. Like I really enjoyed it, so check it out.
So while you were saying that, the geographic map was just swirling in the background while you were talking, and it was like, you should know that the Wellerman is the most popular in some rural cities in France.
Okay, you should know that.
You should, and I want to know where, like...
You need to know that.
Yeah, and I really want to know where Bollywood metal is most popular, so I will explore this after.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of The Short Game. If you like the show and want to support it, we have a Patreon, and we have an active, fun, amazing Discord that patrons at all levels can be a part of. We do a lot of the planning for the show in there. We are always looking for suggestions. It's a great place to join the community, meet some super cool folks, and help support the show and just be a part of a cool community. So you can find that at patreon.com/theshortgame. If you can't support the Patreon, we understand. It's crazy right now in the world. But we always appreciate taking a few minutes to leave a review on iTunes or whatever you use for your podcast listening. Let us know if you how you enjoy the show. A few minutes, all we ask. We always appreciate that. If you have a question or a comment for the show, you can go to our website at www.theshortgame.net. There's a comment form there, or you can follow us on Twitter at _shortgame. You can find me on Twitter at NateSTL. And Laura, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
And Shane, where can people find you?
On Twitter at 8BitShane.
And thanks everyone again for listening. Have a great week.